Hello, welcome to the Northwest Cavalryman Show, the podcast where your host, Rick Skolrud, discusses politics, news, and current events affecting Canada, the United States, and the world from a conservative perspective. Warning, professionally offended people and liberal crybabies may be triggered. Viewer discretion is advised. Now here's our host, Rick Skolrud.
Hello, how are you doing today? I hope I'm live and everybody can hear me. I can't say for sure. I just had some more technical difficulties. But hopefully we're live. If anybody is there, please say hello in the chat. And I'll get that started. So today we're talking about the world communist or the global communist government. So what happened today is I found a report on the, I think it was on X, about how there is a global minimum tax rate that is coming into effect. Now, this is for corporations, so multinational corporations, which may sound like it doesn't apply to a lot of people, but as you know, all taxes roll downhill. So let's take a look at this. So the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, which of course started in 1961, has proposed this new tax. Or it's not really a new tax. Essentially what they're doing is they're forcing governments to tax corporations that make over 750 million euros per year, a minimum of 15%. And again, you might think, well, what's the big deal? Because, you know, most, there's a, you know, that doesn't mean anything for us. Our taxes are not obviously whatever. They're not corporate taxes. But of course, taxes roll downhill. So whatever you pay or whatever the corporations pay, you will end up paying. Now, I think Canada already has more than 15% corporate tax. So it's not really going to affect Canada too much. But I think what happens here is we're giving away too much of our authority or our sovereignty to basically world-wide organizations. So this is supported by the WEF. And I think a lot of people in Canada are very leery of the WEF, especially since our Prime Minister and our Deputy Prime Minister, Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, are very staunch supporters of the WEF. I'm starting to really distrust all international organizations, especially ones that have any sort of control over Canadians, control over me, or control over any other Canadians. I think that we elect people to represent us in Ottawa, and they're basically giving control over a lot of aspects of our lives to global organizations. We didn't elect anybody in the WEF. We didn't elect anybody in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. But yet we're allowing them to dictate different practices, including this corporate tax rate, or this minimum corporate tax rate. So how this minimum corporate tax rate is going to work is we will, if a country does not charge a minimum of 15%, then other countries will have the ability to tax that corporation. So if your corporation is, say, located, your corporate headquarters, you're located in Ireland, and let's say Ireland has a very low tax rate. Let's say it's 5% or less. Well, then this Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has somehow arranged where other countries can tax that corporation. Maybe it's the country they primarily do businesses with. Maybe it's the OECD itself, and they distribute that money. But I think that it's kind of dangerous to give this amount of control to an international organization or to countries other than your own. Taxes are essentially a necessary evil, and the more taxes you pay, the less productive your country is. That's always been a fact. Ronald Reagan proved that he could cut taxes and revenues would increase, and so did Donald Trump during his time as president. You cut taxes, productivity increases, and the amount of money that you give that the government gets increases. Now, I firmly believe that government is too big to begin with. I think that government should be cut probably as much as 50% or even more, and that our current taxes are way too high. But obviously we do need some tax. So I do understand that. What I really dislike is the fact that our government is expanding essentially internationally. So we have three levels of government now, and sometimes there's even more than that. So I live on Vancouver Island in British Columbia. But when I was living in the Lower Mainland, you had whatever municipality or city you lived in. Then you had the GVRD, which was a non-elected body, but it had control over a lot of things that were going on. So your mayor, and I think some of your councillors would also be on this GVRD, Greater Vancouver Regional District. And then we had the provincial government, and then we had the federal government. And there's all sorts of other levels in there. TransLink, for example, in the Lower Mainland, had the ability to tax citizens. So they weren't elected. They were a corporation that handled, the buses and the light rail system. But they had taxation authority. So essentially they were a level of government. So how many levels of government did we actually end up with? Was it 3? Was it 4? Was it 5? When we're moving towards this global international community that has authority to tax or set tax rates, well, then we have even another level of government. Think of the Europeans. The Europeans have, whatever levels of government they have in their countries. Then they have the European Union, another level of government. And one could argue that the UN is another level of government because they make decisions that affect us. So how many do we even get? How many do we even have, all of these levels of government? I wonder where the OECD will stop. Will the OECD stop at these multinational global companies? I don't think they will. I think that we will see a level of taxation even for the citizens. But regardless, the taxation on these multinational corporations is a tax on the citizens because taxes roll downhill. And I know I've been I've had some people in the comments of some of my other videos criticize that and say it is not true when I was talking about the carbon tax on our, on the Canadian people and how it would affect prices, and prices would go up because they get passed on. It does. All corporations will eventually pass on the price, the cost of doing business, and taxes are cost of doing business. So what's happening with this global minimum corporation tax is simply a tax that will result in higher prices. And the World Economic Forum being behind this tax, I think that it is just another level of government. So how many levels of government are we going to end up with? As I said, like in the Lower Mainland, you have at least 3 levels of government, but in actual fact, I think that you even have more. I can't see that that this will stop at the corporations, and it won't. I mean, you are going to be paying for it, but you're also going to, I think, see a tax on citizens, a minimum tax on citizens. So how are they going to enforce this? Well, apparently there is they're moving everybody, all these countries, towards a digital taxation system, which of course Canada actually has. So what does that tell you? Canada's already set up for this, and they are one of the 132 countries that are moving towards this. I don't think it'll affect too many Canadian companies because I think the Canada tax rate is higher, but it will affect products that are coming in overseas. What used to happen is if a country was dumping products onto your market at a lower cost than you could be making them in your country, if there was problems with companies just not having not having the overhead that Canadian companies had, there would be tariffs put on it. That has been around for hundreds of years. But now we're looking at this minimum tax rate. It's designed, I guess, to what they say in their publications is to, deal with undertaxed corporations and undertaxed countries. I think it's just an interference. I really believe that it is a form of interference. We're interfering with other people's countries, and other people's countries are interfering with us. So, I'm just going into the chat now. Hey, let me know what you think about this. I've got a couple of chats here. Gene is saying too much of our money is going out of Canada to other countries, and I wholeheartedly agree to that. With that, I mean, we're paying millions and millions of dollars, probably even billions of dollars, to support the war in Ukraine. I know that for the United States, it is billions, and I think that we are probably getting close to billions. And we've spent billions of dollars supporting other countries and bringing them along. And while that may seem like a good idea and may seem like a good, global community idea of bringing other countries along, the truth of the matter is that Canada is hurting right now, and we need to get our own house in order. And I used to say this when the first Trudeau was around, that, we're just, we're being overtaxed, and we're just being, obviously taxed to death, and we're giving all of our money away. I read an article on, it was actually posted on True North, and it was by the Fraser Institute, how Canada, if we could cut costs by only 2.3%, we could balance the budget and actually be in a surplus by 2028, so within 4 years. So if I think that, if we could do that, then obviously that would be great. But how are we going to do that when we're giving all of our money away? And these global organizations are making up the rules. If the WEF and the OECD are making up the rules for us, then we're not being controlled, or our politicians aren't running the country. I think it's as simple as that. So, let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to or in the chat. Let me know what you think, because we're taxed to death and we're giving our money away. And now our corporations, if we're in a country that had low corporate tax, which we should be, because as I said before, taxation on corporations lead to higher taxes for the rest of us. It used to be that when the GST came in, it was supposed to replace the manufacturer's tax. But it added more tax to us because it was not just the goods tax, it was the service tax. So, and it was a tax on everything, not just what was produced in Canada, but what was produced outside. So it ended up causing more of a tax burden on us. Maybe it was more fair. We've lived with it now for a long time. But it seems like you can't get ahead. Every time you try to get ahead, they're slapping on more tax. And if our corporations now have this minimum tax, then we're going to end up paying for it. So, Mary says we have no manufacturing base for 90% of the goods in Canada because most Canadians can't get large business loans in that sector. True. Our manufacturing base is, I think, very low. And most of our manufacturers, like the car manufacturing business, the head offices are based elsewhere. So a lot of that profit is going out of the country. Let me know, what do you think of this tax? Is this, am I out to lunch here? Is this global minimum tax for corporations? Do you think that's a good thing? Obviously, that I don't, but, I'd love to hear some other perspectives on that, because, I think the goods that we buy are now going to go up because of it. Any corporation that's based in Ireland, for example, is now going to be taxed more, because apparently Ireland was a tax haven. So I don't know how many goods that we actually get from Ireland. I really don't know. I can't say that I've ever seen a tag on any of the products that I buy that says made in Ireland. But it is an example. Obviously, the price for those items are going to increase. If there's a company in the Caribbean, in one of those tax haven countries, taxes on that are going to go up. So we're going to be paying more money on what we buy from those companies. And yes, you can say, well, it's not going to affect all corporations because they have to make a minimum amount. They're making 750 million euros or more, which I think comes out to 800 and some $100 million US, $811 million US. So it's out of control for us. And all of these corporations that make all this money, they're in business to make money. They're not going to absorb this. That's just the bottom line. It all rolls down to the consumer. That's what I think. So let's see what other people have to say here. We have you have well taxes if you have a farm. So that is, I didn't know that. That's kind of bizarre, I think. If you're taxed on well water and having a well, they're taxing you on a necessity, which I don't believe is right. I personally think that any tax over 10% is theft, because the government should be able to operate on a tax on less than 10% of our taxes. When the thing I mentioned before about cutting the cost of government by only 2.3%, well, there's up to 5%. We're losing up to 5% of our budget of what we pay out every year in corruption every year. That came out of I was watching Parle Review yesterday, and it was the OGO committee, so the Committee on Government Operations and Expenses, the standing committee. And before a liberal shut it down for whatever corrupt reason he had to shut it down, forced them into essentially a filibuster for an hour and 45 minutes, which resulted in them not shutting down the committee for the summer, which is what the Liberal wanted. But he essentially shut down the committee for the day. They had to deal with this motion of shutting down committee for the summer. But before that time, there was a lady who was testifying, and I don't know what department she was from, but she oversaw around 36 departments, I believe, because she said that there was all this corruption in about 36, or all this fraud, sorry, in about 36 departments that could be as much as 5%. And 5% corruption, if we could get rid of that 5% corruption, and I think that was all in regards to, contractors. Well, if we can get rid of that, maybe that would make up the 2.3% because of all the contractors that we're paying. And that would put us in the black. That would get us out of the red, put us in the black. So I think that we got to look forward to that. Canada has never supported any Canadian business. All our talent goes to the States because Canada isn't interested in investing in Canadians. It's always been that way. Yeah, Cynthia, that's from Cynthia. I agree. We're not supporting Canada the way we need to. We need capital investment by companies, not government subsidies, free market, so we can add productivity to increase our GDP. That's from Dale. Absolutely. If you look at all these programs that the Liberals are introducing in this last budget, it's the only reason why we even need them, or why some people even need them, is because we're taxed to death, because people can't look after themselves. And when we get to this state where we're essentially living in a communist country, where everything is provided by the government, and we're not trusted to use our own income for ourselves and provide for ourselves. And that's why, people are going and having all of this, or needing all of this, daycare, $10 a day daycare, and food in schools. Well, that is a parent's responsibility. And the truth is, if it wasn't so expensive to live, if the government hadn't been printing money and driving up the costs ever since Pierre Elliott Trudeau 1, then there could be more one income household, so there could be a parent staying at home. We have had a decrease in the number of children being born, the fertility rate, for decades. Here's a graph that I did for another video or put up, but as you can see here, back in about the 1960s, we started really declining in population, and that's when the pill came out, essentially. But even though the pill came out, and it began to be used in about 70 in the 1970s for birth control, it wasn't until the mid 70s that we dropped below the replacement rate. I think that there's more to it than that. We put a lot of people to work because of the need for two-income households. So if you don't have a parent staying at home to raise kids, they put it off, and they put it off until they're financially stable. So young families, just have less kids, and sometimes they put it off so long they can't have kids. Like I have 2 kids, but that's below the replacement rate. So I'm not even doing my part, I guess, because, we started late in life. We were in our 30s when we started having kids. And it's all because the government is spending too much money and printing money. And these taxes are going to make it even worse. So that's where I stand on this. Let me know. Do you guys agree with this global taxation minimum? Because I swear that I believe this is not going to end with multinational corporations. This is going to be pushed down to the population. This is going to be pushed down to everyday citizens who are just trying to make ends meet. We know that we as Canadians are way overtaxed, and our government is just printing money, driving up the cost of everything. Well, they need to, and they don't have any clue about economics. And we've seen this, as I said earlier on, with Reagan and Trump have both shown that if you cut the tax rate, you can increase productivity and actually increase your revenues for government. But I think we should also cut the government by at least 50%. But anyways, that was it's a short one today because I really didn't have a lot to offer. And just prior to going live, my OBS started acting up again. So it seems like I'm all set up, and it looks like I'm going to be doing fine. And then something happens with either OBS or YouTube, and I'm in a panic for the last 5 minutes to get everything going. But at least it worked this time, and the chat worked. So I'm glad for that, and I'm glad that everybody who joined in. And if you have any last minute comments, just feel free to make them. And if not, then I'll see you next week. So we'll talk to you later.